item on our agenda tonight is the public hearing on the annual budget. I'll ask, does the public have any comments or questions about the public hearing? Okay. All right. I guess first thing we need to do is a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. So the public hearing is open at this time for any public comment. Does anyone in the public have any comments as far as the annual budget? We'll get it out in a minute. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Susan Ingalls, 101 East Water Street, and I am concerned not to have seen clearly, and perhaps it was there, that there is funding for the plan for bike and pedestrian pathways, especially for a few key spots that are not safe.
Well, most of the funding that we've used for any of those type of updates and any of those assets has been embedded in the Powell bill funding.
Okay.
When we removed the stormwater portion from that 4560 account, any of those street improvements have been embedded in that.
Okay, so there's a chance we will see a crosswalk and a bike lane, et cetera.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, thank you.
And where would you need a crosswalk?
There are 3 places I am especially concerned about. At the post office, there's obviously a stoplight, but there's no indication for pedestrians when the turning traffic is going to turn into them. And I've had the unfortunate experience of being turned into more than once. The higher traffic area, even higher traffic than that areas, are at the drugstores, CVS and Walgreens, and at the grocery store. That I probably should have started with that one. That is so important. Everybody has to get to the grocery store, and many have to walk to it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else to make any comments about the budget? If not, I'll entertain a motion to.
He raised his hand.
Yes, sir. I didn't see it, I'm sorry.
Would we be allowed one short question intermittently? Because that's quite a document to read over the weekend.
John, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I said, could we be allowed one question somewhere along the way? If you don't have a public speak point, and yet inevitably the nature of this thing, people will probably have questions. Gee, if I'd only known. So I'm just asking as a courtesy, if vote might be allowed.
Is it regarding the budget?
Yes.
Well, now, huh?
Yeah,
That's what we're doing right now, John. If you got a question or statement, that's what we're doing right now.
Do you have a question?
Well, the question I had last time, is there any improved lighting? Because when the violence and the guns and everything were discussed at Shalom Church several months ago, that was a major concern. So we hope that the budget includes some improvements in lighting in the community. My intuition is you can't do it all in one year financially, but at least a meaningful gesture would help a lot of folks feel comfortable that are not comfortable now.
And I'll be glad to answer that. Mr. Mitchner, yes, sir, there was additional lighting for street lighting improvements embedded within the electric department, as well as some of our network expansion for those special project funds. So, yes, sir.
Okay, I'll ask once again, any other questions, comments pertaining to the budget? Okay, if not, I'll ask for a motion to go out of the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, now we need a motion to adopt the 23-24 budget and budget ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mayor, I did have one item. I appreciate all the work the staff has put into this, and I appreciate, I know as our citizens do, that there's not going to be a tax increase. I've objected to it before and wanted to object to it again now, not enough to vote against the passage of our proposed budget. I will vote in favor of it, but I'm not in favor of any increase to town councilman's salaries. I think with last
Is that
year's-
in there? It is.
I think with last year's tax increase and the increases on our, some of our fees, I'm just not in favor of it. I just wanted to voice that objection. It's not getting in the way of me voting in favor of the budget that Corey and his staff work so hard on.
Any further comments?
I understand Councilman Pye's position, and as someone who won't benefit too much from any increase, I feel that the increase is needed. It is helpful to people who might not have the salaries that some members might have to consider running for the office. It encourages people who might be on low income, any additional funding in order to apply for running for office for this town council. So I think the increase is reasonable, it's consistent with what other people are getting, and I think it sets a nice precedent and encourages other people to follow public office.
Well, counter to that, I would say that anybody that's gonna run for this position is gonna do it for the salary. Is running for all the wrong reasons.
Right. Not
I
even.
think for some people that it does make a difference that they are able to do that, not running for the salary, but they give up so much and it's so expensive to hold public office, and this could be helpful.
And just a point of clarity, Mayor, if I may, I think the last time that we had revisited this was 2017. Was I think the last time that we had looked into this and any type of official change had taken place. Just for a point of information.
Any other comments?
Yes, before we actually vote on the budget, line item E, is it possible to move that up as it actually affects the budget? Would we vote on that first?
It's
or-
already in.
Okay.
Everything after item B is embedded in the existing budget.
Okay. Gotcha.
Any further? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the budget.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. You have your budget. Okay. The next item C is adoption of fiscal year 23-24 stormwater fee. And, Corey, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Mayor. The budget and the budget ordinance would have
We did
been
that.
approved and yeah, they're together. The next item here, any type of rate change or rate creation for this upcoming year's budget has to be voted upon. Just to give some background information on this, historically, the town had used the POW bill funding for the majority of the stormwater repairs that have been made within the town. The stormwater fee that's presented here will generate a total of $99,000 annually, which is roughly the public works needs. for annual maintenance. This was really something I've been working on for at least a good 4 years on the development of this. This funding was mainly driven because of the rising infrastructure cost around the materials, particularly for stormwater, as well as the declining funding that we're continuing to see each year for the POW bill. And to give you an idea of this rate structure, that this stormwater fee would be a monthly charge for residential of $3, a monthly charge for commercial of $8, and a monthly charge for industrial of $12.50. This structure would be added to the utility bill, and it would also free up roughly $99,000 from the POW bill funding, which we had spoken about recently. This is kind of twofold for us. One, having an individual stormwater fee is something that Anne Marie and I had worked on for quite a long time, and to get to this point of implementing it is really necessary. But also when we talk about our long-term paving plans, as well as our sidewalk repairs, as well as our bike ped improvements, rather than spending the POW bill funding on the stormwater repairs, this will focus primarily on our streets and sidewalks. If there's any questions around that, be glad to answer any more. Yes, sir.
I got a question, Corey. Stormwater drains. Is there any way that we can put these drains, I know we got a lot of them in the town, if we can get these things cleaned out every so often? Because if we wait until a storm is coming, Edenton is flooded quite a bit.
Yes.
I mean, because the water can't go nowhere.
Yes, sir.
And I know when you get 8 inches of rain in an hour and a half, it ain't nowhere it's going nowhere if they are perfectly clean, you know.
Yes, sir. And so the way that it's structured, there are roughly 2,400 stormwater drains within the town. All those were assessed back in 2020 when we worked with the folks from SEPI. And those 2,400 drains are set up on a 2 time per year minimum touch. And what that is the work orders for those are generated every 6 months at a bare minimum, so at least every catch basin has eyes put on it twice a year. That's
Okay.
separate from our routine cleaning, as well as any hot spots that we know that are problematic for vegetation or any type of landscaping, which may oftentimes find its way in. So yes, sir, I mean, we'll continue to do that, and we do have an active system in place to make sure that we stay on top of it.
Okay, thank you.
As a follow-up, Councilman Barnes' question, prior to a hurricane, you know a hurricane's coming within hours or a day. Is there a protocol in place with Public Works to hit certain
Yes,
problem areas, to make sure they are clean?
yes, yes. And
I'm looking at Pembroke Circle.
And so we work leading up to those storms for 2 or 3 weeks before, depending on the projections in the track to stay in front of that. And there is a hurricane preparedness plan that we have that is a 24-hour before, as well as the during, as well as the after. And that's mapped out, and I have personally used that as a former Public Works Director to prepare all of our locations for as best as they can handle, pending we don't have 8 inches of rain in 30 minutes.
Yeah, nothing we can do about that. That's a lot of water.
But yes, sir, there is a plan of action in place that we do implement.
Okay, thank you, Corey.
Yes, sir.
And while we're on the Powell bill, I don't know if everybody knows about it, but just a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, the execution of the Powell bill, how it's funded and everything was changed considerably. I don't remember how exactly that change was done, but the larger cities get the most of the Powell bill, and us smaller cities are
It is,
left for the drugs of it.
it is proportional.
It is. Yeah, so. And that's one reason why it's getting smaller.
And just to note, we did look at Elizabeth City, Williamston, and Plymouth when considering the evaluation. And we did opt to do a flat rate, so everyone had a fair share at paying versus some type of prorated based on pervious versus impervious. It was just a standard flat rate to get this just started for a true dollar amount. We tried to keep it to a bare minimum.
Okay, and action is required on this, so I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, the next is adoption of the fiscal year 23-24 electric rate increase.
Thank you, Mayor. We discussed this back in the beginning of June, as well as there was a explanation shared in the budget memo and this packet. And this year, we are looking at roughly a 1.62% energy cost increase, as well as a roughly 11.24% for demand. As we stated before, these increases were needed for two reasons. One, the forecast for the increase in purchase power pricing that the Power Agency is projecting in relation to some of our bad debt. We should see that trickle through in September or October, and that is from the Eastern Municipal Power Agency's last processing of the Sharon Harris debt. I'm a Board of Commissioners member for that. We have not decided fully yet how that $50 million will be divvied amongst the Eastern Power Association, so there's still some unknown, but we should see some type of purchase power increase around that time. And also just the overall increase in inflation in materials and costs based on our purchase power dollar amounts. So what this means when we talk about a residential charge, we should see an increase in residential from roughly $11.10 up to $15.50. A customer charge for small commercial and public housing from $25.50 up to $30. Facilities charge increase from $105 to $500 for our large general service and coincidental peak. These charges, when you say what does this do to the average residential customer, and based on the projections that we've had, that we've worked with our electricity's folks, most residents, should see a change between $5 and $6 in their power bill. We work really hard with the electricity's folks and their rate folks to try to do this. I do want to share that all these numbers are significantly lower than our peers, still within the electricities. We take keeping these rates as low as possible when we go into this, and Virginia and I work really hard on trying to keep that a reality. But knowing what was coming in this calendar year 23, fiscal year 23/24, preparations had to be made. And so we do recommend the rates as presented. Glad to answer any questions.
Can I ask you a question, Corey?
Yes, sir.
I get this question asked to me a lot. We've got a lot of elderly people that are on fixed income, and sometimes when it comes time to paying light bill, they don't have all their money. They're choosing between light bill and food and other things. And we get to a point where we cut their lights off, and what's the fee we charge them to get those lights back on?
There's a $25 disconnect and our late fee, and a $75 reconnect if it's physically shut off.
Okay. Is there any way that we can look at this and distinguish who these people are? Because if they don't have the money to pay their light bill, there's no way in the world they can afford $100 to get light turns back on. I'm talking about our senior citizens
And
who have lived here all their lives, that are struggling to try to make ends meet. It seems, I'm just asking a question. Can we do something to help these people out?
yes, sir. And so Virginia and myself and Jessica have worked through this to try to establish thresholds that if an individual can't afford a $60 a month light bill, than us having a $25 fee and then an additional $75 fee for reconnect, that we have established those thresholds to try to be considerate of that. We do work very hard between the 1st and the 15th to find resources or options
Okay.
to make sure that folks are getting everything they need. And it's delicate, and we try to keep that in mind when we get to the point.
I agree. Just to piggyback off of that, I brought it up when we first voted on the customer service agreement or packet or whatever it was. And that was my biggest concern, is that a lot of the fees that we were implementing, there's a 5% late fee, a $25 non-payment fee, plus a $75 reconnection fee. So it's upwards of well over $100. And to me, that's a lot. That's a lot for the average person. If they can't pay it, then, that's a lot to take on an additional over $100, or be equivalent or more than what the actual bill is. And I know you and I had discussions on that, so I would like to revisit that piece, especially the $25 fee. I don't see the need to have that fee there for non-payment. I think the 5% and a $75 reconnection fee should suffice versus that additional $25 fee. So at some point, I would like for us to go back and revisit that.
And I think we can set up some time to look at that, but there are some services, and we try to work very hard with any of the other organizations that can assist customers with needs. We do that regularly. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to first address Councilman Vaughn. We offer a budget billing plan.
Mm-hmm.
So if your constituents would come in and speak to Jessica or Deanna, they can establish a minimum monthly average. That might be a little bit more beneficial to some of the citizens, so that they know for sure my bill is gonna be $150 every single month. And then, like, just say for June, for instance, in June, I know I'm gonna have a true-up month. I'm either gonna have a credit because my bill didn't go over $150 every time, or I might owe a little bit more to bring it back in balance. So that is an option. We don't have a huge number of citizens that take advantage of that.
Okay.
But we can certainly do that.
Maybe.
And to address Councilman Costin, we implement the $25 non-payment fee on the 10th of the month, and that really encourages a lot of the people that are delinquent to go ahead and come in and pay their bill before they're assessed the $75 fee. So that way they're like, oh, I might have forgotten to pay my bill and wanted to pay it really quick. Or they'll call and say, hey, I need help, can I have an extension, or whatever the case may be, and we do try to help before we get to the $75 point.
So does the 5% not encourage that at all?
The 5% is implemented on the 3rd of the month,
Mm-hmm.
because the bill is due the last day of the month. So on the 3rd, if it's not paid by 5 p.m., we assess the 5% interest on the delinquency.
So, and I know we've discussed this before, but maybe looking at the option of, again, I just don't think the $25 fee should be there at all. I think that's just way too much. But maybe altering that date. I think we've already done that before, though, haven't we?
Yes.
Yeah. But again, I just think that's just way too much to charge any citizen. A 5% plus 25, then a 75. That's just way too much. Is that even a common practice of other utility companies?
We actually are on the lower scale of fees that are being charged. Some municipalities charge a reconnect fee for both electric and water if they offer those services, where we're just a flat $75
For all services?
for both services, yeah. And to go back to Councilman Miller, social services actually has 2 different programs that the town of Edenton participates in. One is for electricity and deposits, if they need help setting up an account, need a deposit for that account. And the other is for water. So they can actually apply for 2 different types of grants if they need help there. The county does not participate in the water for whatever
there any type of literature that we can have Tyler draft up and, share that on social media platforms about the budget billing along with, I wouldn't necessarily say the services that are offered through social services, I think that's their job, but at least with the budget billing to educate some of our citizens that Councilman Bond was referring to.
I think we can come up with some type of handout, yeah.
Following up our discussion we had earlier, St. Vincent's de Paul, St. Anne's Church is another resource. People, have a tough time right now, they need some extra cash to pay the electric bill. We can, I forget the lady's name, we hope she's gonna come here and make a presentation sometime in the near future. But that's another resource they can maybe pick up some
Yeah.
cash.
I think about all of your churches have a contingency fund that they help people
Yeah.
like that.
Yep. No,
And-
excuse me, the reason I was asking because it was an elderly lady and it was hot over the weekend. And she was perspiring pretty good. And I asked her, why don't you cut on your air conditioning? And she said, I can't afford it. And I would hate to have somebody in that position of that age that's worked all their lives and gotten to a point where they couldn't cool their body down, because I told her you can go into a heat stroke or something like that, you can pass out, you can die from this. So she said, well, you talk to your people at the town about it then. I said, okay, I'll talk. And I appreciate that information and I'll pass it on.
If you will speak with me or provide me their name after the meeting or tomorrow, I'll be glad to look a little bit more into it.
Okay, I thank you.
Yeah, and we want folks to understand, we really want to be that resource to find them services and the financial assistance if they qualify to help them keep that AC or that power on. I mean, we're mindful of that. This was a really hard 3-week discussion with us and Electricities to even approach this, but there was significant amounts of catching up. The last rate change was from 2019, and so some of this is cumulative.
Okay, good.
How often should we take a look at this so we're not 4 or 5 years out and catching up? I mean, I'm sure residents don't want to get hit every year, but sometimes if it's in smaller chunks spread out, it's better than every 5 years in a big.
And knowing this has become part of our April review when we get to this point, when we look at projections after the first of the year, after the beginning of the new calendar year with Electricities and our Eastern Municipal Power Association. And we get these forecasts through Q1 and Q2, way back during the summer, going into the fall. But really for us, these true ups, when we look at after our January 1st date of that new calendar year, is a lot more accurate. So I think we need to revisit this every year. One thing that we have found is that we're going to work very closely with the electric department on some options we have for crediting our purchase power bill to try to prolong this as long as we can. We really want to keep this to a minimum, and just each one of these numbers are still significantly lower than most of our peers. And we want that to stay, that's the case.
Well, I don't think anybody is anxious to cut someone's electricity off. We have to be mindful of that and the fact that, each one of them has to be dealt with individually.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's case is not the same.
Some are more severe than others.
Both Virginia and Corey have said that they're willing to talk to people and individually and get this work with the people. So I think that's, okay. Having said all that, I'll need a motion for the adoption of the 23-24 electric rate increase.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And the next is updated salary schedule, and, any discussion on that before we take a vote?
I'm just so glad we have, you don't start, full-time people don't start less than $58 an hour. I think that is terrific. Glad we have that.
Was that implemented in this one, this year?
Yeah, it's still active.
Part-time, 12,
Mhm.
12.
Yep, that's correct.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And the next is a budget amendment and work authorization for the hangar and taxi lanes project. Corey?
Thank you, Mayor. So the budget amendment and work authorization that we have here, this is, it was a bit confusing. I know there was a lot of paperwork that was included in the agenda packet with this, and just to kind of clarify some of that, there was a small dollar amount that was remaining from the previous year's budget, so a small portion was paid out of what remaining funding from Department of Aviation was left, like 10,000 or less. What is presented here is the work authorization and budget amendment actually for the continuation of that project. And if you remember, the Airport Commission chair as well as the airport director came in at our last meeting and shared some of the updates. The budget amendment that's presented here is still the MPE funds that we use, that is associated with the taxi, additional taxiway and hangar project that was shown at the last meeting. And so what this will allow is for that work to continue on throughout the entirety of its project.
Okay, I need a motion on that.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The next one is a 2023 audit letter to the governor. And Corey, that's yours again.
And thank
Take it
you,
on you tonight.
thank you, Mayor. Virginia and I, or Virginia got this just over the last 2 weeks. And there's no action required for this tonight. This is just a part of the annual audit process, and basically the letter of governance that was given to us by the auditor basically just is an informative letter and requirement to let the mayor and council know what their responsibilities are, what their work scope is, and what their timing will be for the services that they provide. You know, again, no action for this, strictly a formality for us to show that it was discussed and shared with the board. Virginia, anything else you need? Okay. All right, thank you,
Okay,
Mayor.
there was no action required on that. All right, the next is a resolution of funding for acceptance for project VURD ARP-0055. And that's a $4.4 million income that we got.
Yes, sir. And so
Okay, so,
this resolution will allow the town to accept the 100% grant-funded project for the 2 additional well sites that was approved back in April of 2022 when we submitted that packet.
What's the useful life of these wells?
20 plus years. You can stagger that with redundancy, which is why we're looking at 2 wells here to stretch that out. But it really depends on the water quality and if there are any environmental changes below the surface that could affect that. But typically 20 years, 20 plus years for
How long has it been since? Or 20 years.
yeah, they've been here a while.
Been here a while.
Yes.
Been there a while.
Yes, sir. But this is 100% grant funded. This is the application that we sent back in April, and I'm very excited to finally got the letter of intent to fund this project and the requested resolution showing council's acceptance.
Yeah, we gotta get some new wells. I might make it 20.
Are these at the same location?
No.
What's the new location?
So we've currently identified 3 locations within the town and the ETJ. We had focused on a particular area within town based on the soil types and soil quality. What we're trying to do in this is place 1 additional well within the bypass and then 1 additional well outside of the bypass. That way, as we continue to move, what would that be, northeast within our county, kind of, 45 and away from 17, the soil type really kind of dictates what the geological evaluations show for water quality. But with the hopes of getting that second well out beyond the bypass, so then that allows us to connect to it for future generations. And so 1 inside, 1 out, but particular locations that cannot really share those specific sites.
Are we facing any problems now in the future with salinization, with changing water conditions as close to the south?
Not for us, based on the soil types. If you look at some of the shallower wells that we may be looking at giving a break or letting rest, I think when you talk about water quality of those sites, there may be some concerns there long term for any type of intrusion you may have. But for now, we're able to balance that by rotating our well sites. This will also allow all 6 well sites, including the 2 new, to be ran at any 2 or at any one of our water treatment plant locations. So this would be the ultimate flexibility for our water treatment process.
Corey, and maybe in the coming fiscal year, it'll probably putting you guys to work, but can we receive some sort of state of the town's infrastructure address, like with each area of infrastructure, maybe a reminder when the last time we had any improvements or a rebuild and what the 5 to 10 year forecast is?
Yes.
Why are you laughing?
Because I could probably give it to you right now.
Well, we got a lot on the agenda. Maybe if you want to put it on the next agenda just to give us that. I mean, if you can gather that information quickly, that would be good information to have.
And I think it's very appropriate to do that at this point. If you remember kind of our operations roadmap that we visited on our retreat back in January, that's really the driving factor of what started that list holistically for all departments. And I think we can start checking or either putting dates beside. I'll be glad to do that. It's due time.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that does require action, so I'll ask for a motion to accept $4.4 million. I think that'd be hard, that's a hard decision.
So moved.
We
Second.
have a motion and a second and a third. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, the next is our town council meeting procedures review. And I'll turn that over to you as well, Corey.
Well, thank you, Mayor. We've been working on this for back since March, and I know we tabled it at that point, and we've been trying to get this thing back around to a full council. I did include the revisions that we had back in March 27th when this was tabled. I brought a print off of that with the stated changes here. Yes, they are, but the comments themselves, for whatever reason, didn't attach to the PDF. But I've got the items here. We look at page 3 of this, talking about adding the language around the residency requirements for public comment and limiting those to 3 minutes. that was item 1. When we talk about the placement of the public comment period, that's still something that was requested to be revisited from this review. I've looked back at the timing on that, and it looks like it has been roughly 1 year this month since we had that last discussion. When I look at revision 3 and 4, those are from page 8 of this document. These are just clerical items that needed some cleanup. One, we should add language for the first sentence. Public access shall include posting of council minutes to the town's website. This is something that we already do, but it just needs to formally be added to this policy. And then also, we should add the new item 28, which would create 29 items on this list. And item 28 should read, in addition to publishing the meeting notices on the Town of Edenton's website, the website shall include information for online viewing meetings and for those unable to attend in person. In addition, the town will continue to post video recordings of all public meetings on YouTube, MediaCom, government channel, and other social media outlets. This is something that we already do. Tammy and I did have a little bit of discussion on this, and I think one thing that we may have missed, in addition to these 4, is we need to specifically add something in here about the electronic /Zoom viewing, that's limited to listening only. That's something I think that we need to provide a point of clarity on, that we don't entertain any public comment from the remote login. And also one of the things here that we should note, talk about limiting the public comment only to the in-person, because we talked about how those changes would need to be implemented, how you account for the mediation of who's in line, who's coming, do they get preference over the folks who are here in public or vice versa. I think we just need to just clean that language up. There specifically is a section in here around public comment, which I think was really the intent of some of the stuff we needed to clean up. That is section 23. One thing to note is that if depending on what council decides tonight, I think at some point in the near future it will be worth revisiting this document to at least include the language around the Zoom login being for listening only, and that public comment piece here needs to add in person only. So those are the 4 changes that were originally presented back in March. Those are 2 new items that I wanted to share with the group.
I'd like to move that we adopt those 4 items that the town manager has presented and add those to our procedures for conduct.
Those 4 items, have you moved the comment from the bottom to the top?
Following the reading of the minutes.
I disagree with that. I'm only one person, so I only got 1 vote. My general thing, I've been here for 9 years. I think the mayor's been here longer than me. You claim you're younger than me, so I say I'm going to be been here longer. But we were elected as councilmen. We were elected to do town business. And it's been the council point of view that we take care of business first, and then we entertain questions. A lot of the questions that might be asked could be answered in the business section of our meeting.
I understand that. At the same time, if we're voting on something and someone wants to speak to that issue, it's important that they speak to the issue before we take the vote.
But we never vote on anything right then and there. There's always a meeting or 2 meetings before we vote, and they have a chance at public comment to voice their opinion. Or we have a open house where they can voice their opinion.
But you're voicing your opinion right now after we vote on it at a committee session. So I'm one of the people who want to revisit this. I agree with you guys in the majority in the beginning. Hey, what's the big deal? Just leave it where it is. But I want to tell you, vote, I was bombarded with constituents on the left, on the right. I was not listening to my constituents on that particular item, and I like to revisit it, and I think it should go more in the beginning of public comment, of the agenda, than the end. So I'm just doing a 180-degree turn. And I agree, it's all-
Don't get mad at me what I'm about to say. So,
I'm listening
you're
to
gonna do what your constituents say, right? You're
listen-
not using your own personal
I'm using my
mind
own
about
head.
it?
I'm using my head, I'm listening to their views and not so much my views. So that's
Okay.
what I'm doing.
Okay. You say what?
So I didn't think it was gonna be this heated.
Huh?
Nothing.
Go ahead.
If you would go over those 4 items again so that we can understand what they are.
So,
And
item
second
number
thing
one,
is, Could we take those one by one? Do we have to vote on all of them as a?
no,
We have
you
a
do,
motion.
Sir?
We have a motion.
the motion was on the floor for all of them, but I'll be glad to restate what all 4 of those revisions are. The first change is add the language to the public comment section that those addressing the council will be Edenton or Chowan residents with the comments limited to 3 minutes. And there's where I think we could embed the information regarding the Zoom being for listening purposes only. These restrictions may be waived by vote of council if the occasion warrants. That would be appropriate. That's change number 1, adding that specific language to section 5, order of business, just as a procedural sentence to that section. That would be added right after the last sentence of that particular section 5. That's the first thing, is to add that language. The second thing would be the adding or the changing of the placement of public comment from the rear of the agenda to somewhere closer to the beginning. That's item 2. Item 3 is we should add the following language after the first sentence. Public access shall include regularly posting of council minutes to the town's website. This is simply a clerical update. This is something that we already do. That's item 3. Item 4 would be we should add the new item 28 and list item 28 as the current item 28 as 29, just to create one more line item. Item 28 should read, in addition to publishing meeting notices on the town's website, the website shall include information for online viewing of meetings for those unable to attend in person. In addition, the town will continue to post video recordings of all public meetings on YouTube, the Mediacom government channel, and other social media outlets. Again, this is something that we already do, but it would just simply be stating it here as item 28, and the former item 28 will be bumped down to just read 29. That's the fourth and last change.
Now, you said somewhere close to the beginning. What's close to?
The county does it at the beginning of the meeting after what, the pledge and all that, is that correct?
This is just one man's opinion, but I don't think we need to vote on all 4 items at one time. I think we need to vote on each individual item. Roger, would you consider rescinding your motion?
I would go with that. I agree with that too.
You would have to rescind your motion. Okay, okay,
And then restate the amended motion
yeah.
at the appropriate time for each.
Okay, read item number 1.
So item number 1 would be to add the language, and this is in section 5, order of business. I do believe adding the language that those addressing the council be Edenton or Chowan County residents with comments limited to 3 minutes. These restrictions may be waived by vote of the council if the occasion warrants to be appropriate.
And I think that came up after the meeting we had at
Shalom. At the
Salome
church,
Church up here. We
Yes.
had some people that made comments that were from out of town.
From out of
So that's
town.
when that came up. So,
You need a motion?
we need a motion.
I want to comment on that. So I don't mind it. I think I was one of the ones who kind of pushed for it, but I thought about it a little bit more. We have a lot of like ministers. For instance, we called upon Reverend Shannon to actually, I think, to do something with that meeting. I forgot what he did. But he's one of the ones who's gotten up and he's spoken at the podium. He's actually involved in a couple of the committees as well, but he's not a resident of Edenton, North Chowan County. So I think about that. You know, people who actually have an influence and an impact in the community. Like now we're suppressing them somewhat.
Eric, what about we say live or work?
Yeah, live or work, yeah, he's employed.
That,
And also,
Yeah.
I think, we have to be careful with doing things on a case-by-case basis. But
Yeah.
I think as written, it allows us, I think it says unless
To make
otherwise
exceptions?
voted upon.
Right.
So if it's someone that we know is a contributing member of this community or has been working on a particular project, then I would be the first to make a motion to suspend our rules to allow that person to speak.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just want to make sure
So, yeah,
that's
we
covered.
we
Yeah.
already have that covered. in
Right.
there.
These restrictions may be waived by vote of the council if the occasion warrants to be appropriate.
Gotcha.
And that would be item number one to make a revision on.
Okay.
And Mayor, one more comment before we start voting on these four sub-motions. Corey, when we look at perhaps some other changes in the coming year to this document, because it's a living, breathing document, and I like how you and some of our fellow council members will look at documents and say, hey, this isn't working, or we see a gap in it and add some things. I would like for us to consider this, paragraph 15 of this document says a motion that is defeated may be renewed at any later meeting unless a motion to prevent reconsideration has been adopted. I would like for us to take a look at that and establish some sort of time frame before a motion can be renewed. And that would avoid continual debate about something that has already been decided. And in this case, we've waited a year, I think. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And, so I think it's appropriate for us to discuss this again. But as written, it seems like if someone was not happy with the vote, then they could continually call for a revote month after month after month. It's not happened yet, but as we look at this thing and see that that might be a gap in it, that might be appropriate.
We don't want to wait 8 years.
Yeah.
Make a motion for it or against it.
Yeah. That's my only
Right,
comment.
yeah.
It wasn't.
And I've made a note about that beside this, and we do plan to review this annually to try to make sure that as things change or evolve, that we do that. And one thing to note here, I know that this is something that was done previously, and just to share, I mean, Councilman Dixon is not here tonight, so, I mean, depending on the outcome of this, and we can revisit if needed, or something. I mean, I know that was the reason behind delaying with a great deal of us being gone in March. So maybe we make these changes and represent that at a later date. I mean, that's also an option.
Okay, this first item, we'll need a motion for or against.
Make a motion for the change.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, number 2.
Item 2 is the idea of moving the public comment period to the beginning of the meeting. Council needs to decide if this is something that they want to consider.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion? Elvin? You've already made yours.
I said what I had to
All
say.
right, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carried. 3, 4, and, all right, and number 3.
Item number 3,
Minutes
think you're opening a can of worms, but
Item
go
number
ahead.
3, we should add the
It won't be
following
your can of
language.
worms.
Huh?
It won't be your can of worms.
It won't be my can of worms.
Corey, we can revisit this every year too. Can we look at this?
You can revisit anything you want to. Not being smart, just,
Just being truthful.
yeah, just being truthful.
We should add the following language, the first sentence, public access shall include regularly posting of the town's minutes to the town's website. This is something that we already do.
Motion,
This is on page 8.
So moved.
so moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And the last item here is, and it's kind of a two-part, we should add the new item 28, and we move the existing 28 to read 29. Item 28 should read, in addition to publishing the meetings notices on the Town of Edenton's website, the website shall include information on online viewing of meetings for those unable to attend in person. In addition, the town will continue to post video recordings of all public meetings on YouTube, the Media.com government channel, and the other social media outlets. This is, again, something that we already do. It would be its own new, unique item 28, and the current 28 would fall to item 29.
And that's all stuff we're already doing.
Yes.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, and that concludes our special meeting. And now we will go into committee meetings, and the first one is the Administrative Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman High.
Thank you, Mayor Stallings. Dwayne and Chess Chesson, our Executive Director of our Destination Downtown Edenton, and Corey have put together a presentation and a proposed ordinance on a proposed social district. And I think Dwayne had to leave, but what I'd like to do is turn it over to Corey and Chess for them to give us a history of the social district concept, the legislation, perhaps some list of some other towns that are doing this, and provide us their proposal on such a district. In talking with some council members about this, I feel like there are a lot of details that we need to work through. So after we have the presentation from Corey and Chess, my recommendation is that we give council 2 weeks before our next meeting to kind of work through those concerns and kind of work through those details, and that we have a full, robust discussion of it at our next full meeting. And that will give us the opportunity to try to work through some of these concerns. I think there's an open mind to adopting one of these, but there are some details that we have to work out. And I also would like to say that because of the type of issue that it is, that we would like to have some sort of public input on the issue also. And we'll just ask that it be pushed for discussion and possible vote in July after we hear from you guys. So, Chess, are you going to start?
Hold on, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
There was a survey done on it, is that correct?
Yes.
Will that be given to us tonight?
Some of that information is here, and I hate Dwayne had to leave, but Chess and Dwayne and I have been working. Also, Tyler's been helping, as well as our TDA director. This has been something we've been really trying to get our arms around for at least a year now. This is something that we've spent a lot of time on viewing. I'm glad Councilman High mentioned that. I do think, in addition to the public survey that was shared, that we have over 400 responses on, that public hearing is crucial for this type of ordinance. And please consider the management plan as well as the ordinance that was presented and the map as draft. We understand completely that there would likely be revisions to this before an official vote was shared. So,
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councilman. And Corey, this is a living document, as Councilman High mentioned earlier. The social district was implemented by the state of North Carolina, I believe, early 2020. Corey, back me up. And so this is just something that we're trying to adopt and bring in. So Dwayne I started in May 1st of this year, and Dwayne kind of had brought this on board. The slides will kind of go in, so there you go, 2021. As a way to encourage economic development in downtown North Carolina and make it easier for restaurants and citizens and tourists to transit between restaurants and other establishments. It allows for alcohol to be sold and consumed inside of the social district boundaries and only sold and brought into participating businesses. And so all businesses have the option to participate, not participate, or allow drinks into their establishment.
Now, when you say drinks, we're referring to unfortified wine and malt beverages only.
It's beer
Yes.
and wine.
Beer and wine, yes, sir.
No alcohol. No liquor?
No hard,
Not hard liquor.
or hard alcohol.
No spirituous liquor.
So I'll get into that. So it allows for participating businesses to sell alcohol to participants, and it must be in a labeled beverage, no more than 16 ounces, and it has to have the establishment's ABC license number on it. And it must be consumed and disposed of inside the social district and not allowed to be taken outside. The businesses or the towns that we've talked to, Washington would be the closest geographic. Elon just rolled theirs out. I've been in talk with their Main Street director, feeling out their process and how it was approved and rolled out in a college town. Greenville is a big proponent of it. They have 2 districts that they recently combined to make one large district. All towns have seen success in it. And regulating, and it creates a framework to hold citizens accountable, and it also provides a means for tourists to come in and enjoy their downtown environment, and also spend more money in downtown. These are the list of the communities that have it currently in North Carolina. I'll stay on here as long as you'd like.
What are similar communities to Mania? Okay.
And we have visited Manio, Washington, and Greenville locations. Dwayne and I both had visited those. I think you had visited some in.
I was in Elon just last week.
Yep, and Dwayne had actually went to a few of these as part of the State Main Street conference this year in Statesville. I think there were some outreaching areas, and if you remember at the League conference in April in Concord, that myself and a few of the council members actually went to some of the areas that these type of districts were put in place to kind of put eyes on how cities implement things like this.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
What are you calling the social district? Are you calling Main Street?
There'll be an approved map. We have a draft of the map of the district. It'll be boundaried on all the websites. So TDA, the town, my website. There'll be a map posted downtown on wayfinding signage, and there'll be boundary signs that delineate, hey, you're leaving the social district. You can no longer have an alcoholic beverage.
That's mainly on Broad, east side.
It mainly Broad, yes, sir. And then any of
Down
the
to the Herringbone, over here by Barker.
yes, that's correct. The herringbone and the green, which will help us establish the wedding, make it easier for wedding participation on the green.
And it sounds like y'all have already surveyed a lot of these towns, but between now and our next meeting, if you could circle back maybe to a couple of them that you may have gotten a good relationship with the contact people there. And if you can, we've heard some support for this. We've heard some concerns about this. There's some common concerns that arise in, I think, every town.
Mm-hmm.
If you can just circle back with a couple of those and readdress those concerns and see if they understand there have been no major problems with it, but just find out if there have been any minor problems or anything that we need to be aware of.
Yes, sir. We can certainly circle back to that. So to your point, Councilman High, so across the country, multiple states are doing this. I'll get you better answers on actual everyone's had some sort of issue in rollout, and my experience with Elon is that they did a soft rollout for 2 to 3 weeks. Their biggest issue was that the college students were kicking stickers off the ground and peeling them up, but that was one of their ways to address the boundary issues. So they just adjusted their wayfinding signage and posted hard boundaries around the streets. However, it's driven tax revenue in every municipality that's implemented it. It's also driven merchant sales and driven tourism, and also encouraged development internally to the vacant spaces. So we anticipate in this proposal, we're including the 2 large vacant buildings at the top of Broad Street of South Broad to hopefully incentivize and encourage development in a restaurant, brewery, anything like that to come into Edenton. So some of the finer issues I've already hit on. The beverage cannot be more than 16 fluid ounces. The container needs to say drink responsibly, B21. It must contain, cannot be glass, must contain the ABC license number for the seller of the alcohol. And the alcohol can only be sold or purchased and consumed inside the social district. So no outside alcohol can be brought in or consumed, and no alcohol can leave the actual district. Any questions on this? I'll give you a second.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
tell us where the beginning and the ending of the social district is. Where does it start and where does it stop?
So this is our proposed map right here, Mr. Mayor. So it'd be just south of the courthouse, right here, coming down Broad Street, and encompassing all of our major retailers and commercial district downtown. We have a cutout here for the green, and then our retailers along this street, and hopefully the hotel. Encapsulates the Barker House, Liberty, Herringbone, and there's a stipulation in the management plan right now that says no alcohol inside the gated confines of the park.
So we're omitting the green, the courthouse green.
That's the whole downtown.
It's being brought in right there. That is in the boundary.
Oh, gotcha. It looks like a cutout, sorry.
Yeah.
Are there any specific hours that this will go on?
We'll address that. So the hours are whatever we vote on, and the survey addresses some of that. And what the constituents are. We try to gauge what the constituents are. The initial management plan proposal is Monday through Sunday, Monday through Saturday being 11 to 9, and then Sunday being noon to 9.
Is 11 a little early, do you think?
Well, I think.
Well, it depends on who you're trying to address. If you're addressing tourism, then no. If you're addressing locals, then yeah, probably. But that's up to you. That's a personal choice.
And so just to kind of to sidebar that, one thing to include here is that when we considered those times, we looked at our restaurants and their opening times to consider only when businesses would be open. That's the initial stages of why those times were selected as the thought process. That's completely open to revision or change, but those are just based off of our hours of our restaurants now.
And Corey, the details that I referred to earlier that I've heard from other council members and also from constituents primarily center among 3 things. 1, the geographic zone. 2, the number of days and which days each week and the hours. So that's something I would encourage all of us to talk about and have a discussion over the next 2 weeks.
Agreed.
And one more thing. You can call me old-fashioned, but you got a bunch of people out here drinking on the streets with kids running up and down the streets, downtown Edenton. I could see if it was on an off street somewhere where you wouldn't have the kids coming up and down, but I don't know, maybe I'm old-fashioned.
I'd invite you to Sunday Fun Day. This
After church Sunday, all I do is eat Sunday dinner.
And take a nap.
That's it.
But you're not having any problem there at that?
No, sir.
at
Actually-
once a month Sunday at Surf
And-
and Fire?
that's
And
correct. Yep.
just
Which is really catered to the children, is it not?
It has, yes, very much so.
The music and the,
Moon Bounce at the
food
last
truck.
one. Food trucks.
Is there one of those this Sunday?
It
Yes.
is.
This Sunday,
Yes, there is.
The
What, the
second.
second?
Yes.
Sunday the 2nd?
Yes, sir.
And I agree. I've been to a couple of them myself, and I mean, it's rather enjoyable. I've never seen any, anyone act. No, not at all.
No, we're not saying anything out of hand, but I'm just saying, what does it show to our young people? You tell them in the house they ain't supposed to be drinking, but they walk down the street and they see adults sitting right out in front of them drinking. That's what I'm saying. Like I said, I'm old fashioned.
And we love you for it. We love you for it.
I'm sorry to keep interrupting your presentation.
No, that's what I'm here for.
Nobody can condemn you for it.
I hope not.
No, we wouldn't.
Like you say, I am what I am.
That's right.
And one thing to add here when we talk about the map, the initial design of this, we particularly tried to include the locations that if you remember, we have folks who are hosting these events that oftentimes come back to council for a resolution to do something similar to this. We tried to incorporate that into the special events permit, where that would be something that would be checked, and rather than someone coming in, like Surf, Wind and Fire for 12 different resolutions on the council agenda to approve their Sunday event, that this would allow us to approve those type of events in office and not bog you guys down with that multiple iterations. So when you think about the shape of the map, think about where things have been commonly hosted for DDE or for one of our businesses or for a wedding or for something with TDA. So those, all those locations were selected for that reason, to simplify that process.
And this social district is a walking district only.
That's correct.
Not on bike, not on scooter.
Yes, sir.
Not any kind of motorized vehicle.
That's correct.
No, they're talking about the sidewalk though. Just
Sidewalk only, that's correct.
Right, not road.
That's correct. So this would be a mock-up of what would go into the cup. So we have a few different variations, either a hard souvenir cup or a sticker, which seems to be, from my talking with the merchants downtown, the sticker seems to be the easiest solution with the existing cupware. Being you can't bring glass into the street, it can't be in a glass container, so like Edenton Bay Trading or Malcolm's would have his plastic wine cup, and if you're ready to leave, you could put a sticker on it with his ABC license.
Would it be necessary to have more of a police presence downtown during this, if this is implemented?
The management plan has been briefed with Chief King and discussed with the police enforcement. Yes, sir.
And one of the things that I've advocated before is more police downtown anyway. So I'm all for that if it can bring more of them down there. I've got a question about the sticker. One concern that I've heard is about increased litter, and we would be able to monitor at least if it was a cup that was being thrown down, if it was a cup resulting from this program.
That's right. Yes, sir.
And to that, could we possibly do it for, I guess, have that business logo on it, like that actual where it came from, at all?
I think the item for that is the ABC permit unique to that business. So when you pick up that cup or that sticker or whatever it is, and of all 100 that you picked up, 99 are coming from one place, you know
You got a problem.
there's a problem there.
Right.
And
So how do you know it came from one restaurant or another?
That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
distinguish.
What is?
Will that be a?
permit number would be
A part of the sticker would include the ABC permit number
Oh,
of the
okay.
for that
establishment.
location.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
But don't we have a form of this right now? The restaurants got tables out on the street, they're drinking.
Yes,
Doing that?
and then that's what started some of the conversation for us to look in this over the last year, and we really wanted to proceed with that slowly. If you remember, during COVID, a lot of the restaurants were given permission to use the town-owned sidewalks for outdoor dining, which included a glass of wine or maybe a draft beer or something along those lines. So the follow-up to that is having alcohol on town property within inside the fenced boundary versus leaving that restaurant, getting a cup to take it, and then to walk over to Vaughn's or to walk to one of the other stores and basically finishing your drink on the way. I mean, that question got, what do we do with the leftover drink that the person may have? And if it's on the sidewalk at a restaurant, why isn't it just on the sidewalk as a whole?
The use case that keeps being brought up when I'm talking with merchants is a family coming into Waterman's and needing to wait 30 or 45 minutes for a table. So then they'll walk down to Malcolm's to grab a drink, and then they get a phone call in 15 minutes that their table's ready. Or they want to get a drink and then wander up and down the Broad Street to go look at shopping, do some window shopping. This allows them the opportunity to do that and also enter the businesses that allow them to enter and actually do some shopping. And on that, so the town and my organization will provide window decals, these window clings. These are mocked up as an Edenton version, similar to the Greenville or the other municipalities that are using this. So there are three options for the merchants. You either no beverages at all allowed in there in the stores. You allow beverages, but you don't have an ABC permit to sell, or you sell. So if you allow beverages in, and also you sell beverages. Talking with the merchants, some of the merchants that do not want drinks inside their stores don't want any drink inside their store. So they don't want coffee, they don't want food, because people come in and they spill it on clothes or spill it on merchandise, and then they ruin something else. So it's not really an alcohol that they don't want in their store, it's just drinks in general.
So would that sticker cover that, cover that concern form? It says please no beverages, please no beverages. That means everything.
It's up to the retailer. It gives them a framework to have the conversation,
Okay.
in my opinion. And then that's what, in my discussions, I've kind of brought that up. It would give them something to say, hey, no drinks in here, no coffee, please. I think that's our last slide. Is that it? Or my clicker's dead? Oh, there we go. I thought so. So these are the results of the social district that was passed around, or the survey that was passed around. We had just over 400 responses. Just over 70% of those were positive. Tyler, back me up with the numbers here. 75 to 80% of those were positive. It was over a course of 2 weeks. Is that correct? 2 weeks. It got very wide circulation. We asked questions about just social district in general, days of the week that you're interested in, hours, what you thought was bad, would be possibly bad about it, what you thought would be good about it, where you were coming from, if you're a local resident or not a resident. We had, I'm trying to think of it's in here somewhere, 20 people from Chowan County. We had a handful of people from across the state. We had responses from Asheville, from Raleigh, from Elizabeth City, that were all interested in a social district in Edenton, from people that live here, come here, visit. Here we go. Thank you. So obviously the weekend had the most positive responses, still with a quarter of the votes positive for the whole entire time frame. This is your breakdown on days. So all day was the most positive, and then followed by just evenings, so 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. So the hours breakdown is really up to the conversation in the council. This is how likely are you to come visit Edenton given a social district again. How do you feel it would affect the atmosphere? So very positively, neutral, somewhat positively were the vast majority of responses. And I'll take any questions, any outstanding questions at this point.
I think we should probably just handle it as I mentioned before we turned it over to you guys, is just to allow us to continue to discuss the concerns or questions that we have as individual council members, and also listen to our constituents and communicate that to you guys leading into the next meeting. Yes. And have a fuller discussion at the next meeting, and depending on where we are, a vote or either further discussion.
And I think that's exactly right, Councilman High. We wanted to share the survey information with everyone what we had collected. We wanted to share those draft documents to see what's in there, to really get council time to really think through this. For any revisions, any updates, I do recommend that public hearing to get more public input. No action has to be taken. This is clearly an informative agenda item, and I wanted that to be known. This may be something that council considers just to completely scrap, which is fine, but this had been a year's worth of work, and we really wanted to share this with you because we do get a lot of questions from the businesses and from some of the potential businesses here.
Has this been shared with the Chamber of Commerce Board, Chess?
They have been a part of the conversation.
They have, yes, sir.
I definitely appreciate you guys' work on this, though. Like I said, it's been a year. Something that I'm certainly in favor of. After further discussion, maybe altering a couple things. But thank you again. I appreciate it.
I will say this: 20 years ago, 24 years ago, section of Durham had this type thing. It was nice. Your restaurants, your nightclubs and things. You had your tables and stuff up there, and it was a whole section of it. And folks walking the streets, enjoying themselves, sipping on the outside. There was some restaurants up on the roof that had the same thing going on. I'm not a swear. I am.
And Corey, Councilman Bond and Mayor Stallings and I were joking after we were last discussing the changes to the town council meeting procedures that we can reconsider anything at any time. And if we do adopt something like this, I would just want it to be understood that we can revoke it or rescind it at any time if we feel there are too many problems or if people aren't taking advantage of it responsibly.
That's built into the management plan, the ordinance. From an administrative standpoint, it does simplify the process for me only for events. But we're used to doing resolutions for council's approval for special events. So if we have to revert back to what we have now, if this were to pass, it would be a very seamless transition for us.
Okay.
And
Thank
quick,
you. Mayor, I think that concludes our discussion on that first agenda item. Our committee does have a second agenda item that I don't think will generate as much discussion, but Corey has requested that we update our employee policy manual to require a residency requirement for our electric department employees, and that requirement would be that they live within 30 minutes of the electric department office located at 105 West Freemason Street.
and on that, that's the original request, Councilman High. I want to modify that to 45 minutes. Only because the majority of the applicants that we're receiving are coming from Martin Community College or Nash, and we're finding a lot of applicants that are interested in our electric department that have received that line tech certification through the community college system are staying in the Williamston area. And there's a 15-minute window that's really cutting off a lot of the applicants that we see because of that residency requirement. So we are wanting to bump that up 15 minutes.
Can I ask a question about when there's an emergency or when there are members on call? Do we have a rotating call schedule where employees are on call for the electrical department in the event of emergencies or problems?
Yes, and so part of this discussion was had with our interim electric director about that, that these individuals, if they were not within that 30-minute window, which is our typical response time, that for the on-call schedule, that they would be partnered with someone that was within that 30-minute window. And it is common practice for us that initial on-call person, whoever that primary is, comes in and goes directly to the location where the incident is occurring to try to analyze what is needed. They return, and by that time, that individual should be there. So we would partner these individuals if they stay beyond 30 minutes with someone that does, if they make it to on-call. Yes,
And
sir.
how many people on any one weekend or any one night do we have on call? Do you know?
We have 2 people on call every night of the week for this department as well as Public Works.
So a 45-minute person would be combined with someone 30 minutes or less?
That's correct.
Okay.
And this would allow us to increase our candidate pool for this department. I really wish we had this program here, but it is something that our peers to the west offer. That maybe we'll have it one day and we can revisit this. And
Does anyone northeast of Nash and Martin Community College have that sort of program?
no one within that 30-minute window. They're the closest 2 programs that we have.
Maybe we can convince COA to locate that program in Edenton.
That would be wonderful.
Question, Mayor. Do we have any other departments that have similar time restrictions? I know some of our police got one.
Yeah.
Do we need to make this broader than just the electric department?
I think that's a possibility. Most of our residency requirements now are on a department by department basis. And we haven't had this issue arise from the current requirements. And this happened, we got 2 vacancies, 3 new applicants came in for the electric department that had finished the program at Martin Community College. Those applicants were not even being able to be considered because they couldn't live here for multiple reasons. One, they were starting off into this field, and then 2, the housing concern and pricing really limited that. So this allows them as a young starting person, but we haven't crossed that bridge yet at some of the other departments. We've been fortunate. But in the very near future, I think that is a reality. I think that maybe we revisit this holistically for each department to make sure that our residency requirements aren't affecting us, because employment right now is a challenge for new candidates.
And Mayor, if there's no objection from the members present here tonight, I would just ask that we push this to full council with a favorable recommendation.
Okay, all right,
And
great.
that completes our administrative committee.
Thank you, sir. And that
reports.
completes our agenda for tonight, and I'm aware of that.
All right.
And I couldn't miss it. And we're now getting ready to go into a closed session, so we'll ask the public, if you would please dismiss yourselves, and I'll need a motion to recess this. Okay. And now motion to go in closed session. Okay.